excited to be with you all tonight. So my name is Haley Ballast. I have lived in the Highline area for 25 years, my childhood and my adulthood, with a break in the middle in LA. I came back. I'm happy to be back here in Seattle for the last 10 years. I'm a member of John Knox Presbyterian Church, just a little ways down the road. And I attended public schools in the Highline School District for 13 years, from kindergarten to graduating from Mount Rainier High School. I'm now a Highline School District parent. I have 4 children that are in the Highline School District, and my children have attended 3 different Highline schools so far. We're trying to go to as many as we can. And we have a combined 14 years of Highline School District education in my family with my kids. I'm also a candidate for ordination in the Presbyterian Church USA, and I'm a student in the Masters of Divinity program at Seattle University, and I'm an organizing intern at the Church Council of Greater Seattle. So in my work at the Church Council, I have been learning about faith-based community organizing. So this is different than some kinds of organizing you might be familiar with, because it's not primarily about campaigns and issues and initiatives and those types of things. The kind of organizing we do is motivated by love, and it is centered in people's real, lived, embodied lives. It's about the people we love, and the people we love are affected by issues and initiatives and these types of things. So in our work, we may focus together on specific issues, but as we do that, we always continue to put people at the center. So there's a process that we use in organizing, and it's a circle that helps to guide our work. And I've drawn it up here. It starts with listening. From listening, we move into learning. By learning, we can act effectively, and then we always reflect on our actions together, which puts us right back in position to listen again. So we've begun our work with people at the center by listening. As members of faith communities in the Highline area in partnership with the Church Council, we've been listening to people in this community. And we've been listening to the faith leaders who know them and who pastor them here in the Highline area. Our listening process is based on this image, this triangle. So in our listening, we've been listening to Pope Francis. And Pope Francis says that there are 3 things that human beings need to live a life of dignity. And he says them in Spanish because he's Argentinian. So he says people need techo. That's basically roughly roof, ceiling, something over our heads to protect us from the outside world, from the elements. Protection. We need tierra. So this is translated land, but it doesn't mean we need to own land or be a land-owning people. We need a land. We need a land that's ours, that we belong, where we're welcome. We need trabajo. We need work. And certainly that could mean a literal job, a paycheck, but it's more than that. It's also the opportunity to adequately provide for your family and to meaningfully contribute to society. Techo, tierra, trabajo. Housing, belonging, and work. So we listen and we ask, what are the issues that you are facing that make it difficult for you to live a life with dignity, for you to live a life where these things are in place? And I want to share what we've heard as we've listened. We have heard that the rent in King County is increasing at an unbelievable pace. In Seattle, the average rent per month has increased 57% in just the last 6 years. In some cities in South King County, it's going up even faster and more dramatically. And we also have learned that when the average rent in an area goes up by $100, a King County report in 2015 says that 15%, the homeless population will rise by 15%. So a $100 rent hike in a given area, you can expect to see homelessness increase by 15%. Many people in this community, and even in this room, know how hard it is to just find a place, regardless of what the price is. The inventory is so low, the vacancy is so low in Highline, and often what's available then, because of the low vacancy, is not well maintained It might be unhealthy. There could be issues of mold or code violations. But there's so much competition to get a unit that the person wanting the unit might not have the luxury of asking much about the condition. They may not want to take that risk. So students in Highline schools, my kids' classmates, members of this community, my neighbors, refugees and immigrants, people we love, often lack access to adequate, healthy, affordable housing. Tierra, a land. As we listen, we are hearing from people in Highline who live in fear of deportation. Those of us who have never, ever had to worry about this may not even realize that deportations are happening right here. There are, in many cases, mothers who are separated from their children, deported back to their countries of origin, leaving their children without them. The ones who deported are often young adults. They might be young adults going to school or to work, who don't have any family in their country of origin, who don't remember it at all, who came here before they could even remember and have always believed themselves to be American. We are hearing from teachers that their students are afraid. People in our community who have been victims of crimes are afraid to go to the police because that may endanger them even further. And last week, I personally was shocked and sickened when inflammatory flyers that violate privacy and throw out terrible accusations were sent to thousands of households in Burien. Hate crimes are on the rise, and there's an atmosphere of fear. It's palpable, and the people we love are scared because they don't have a land. And Trabajo, the Northwest, is known as having a booming economy, that we've recovered well from the economic crash, and that's certainly true in some ways. We've had a lot of economic growth in our region at the top of the economy, which is exemplified by the success of Amazon. And this growth has led to what some people call an hourglass economy. There are lots of jobs at the top, high-paying jobs, and companies like Amazon create a lot of low-paying jobs, like they've created in their distribution center where many of our community members work in Kent. But not very much growth is happening in that critical middle section. And this is where we see the interconnection. These aren't just three separate things. And if you saw the drawing that's available on the white table over there, it's actually arms that connect to one another because they're all interconnected. If you work full-time at one of these low-wage jobs, you are likely paying 60 to 80% of your monthly income just for rent. Which means that even if you have techo, you have a place, you may not be able to keep it, or it may be very poor quality. Or your landlord may have 50 people lined up to move into that apartment the moment you do anything he doesn't like. And as we listen to our community, we are hearing about poor working conditions, about dangerous and high-risk jobs with very low pay. We hear that the people we love are often unable to adequately provide for themselves and their families. So we've been listening, and we want to learn. We don't want to stay up here, we want to go somewhere. So we're learning, we're doing research meetings. What moves us from listening to learning can be research. So we've been meeting with experts and leaders in issues of housing and immigration, including a colleague of Councilmember Up the Grove. We've met with King County Councilmember Larry Gossett, and also with staff members of the Housing Development Coalition. And those meetings, along with others, have helped us to get clear about how to prioritize our work, how to move, how to learn from what we've heard and focus it into specific action that will make a difference in the lives of the people we love. And you're going to hear more about those specific actions from some of my colleagues in a few moments. Lastly, through this process of research, rooted in what we're hearing as we listen, we've learned some very surprising things about the reality, and I would even call it the hidden reality, of our local community. Our research has been motivated by the question, what are the real sources of the pressures on our family? The pressures to these three things here, the triangle. where are the pressures on these actually coming from? Many of you probably know the apartment complex, the Heights, or it's now called Alturas on Ambom. If you just go through Burien, like you're heading to West Seattle, you'll see it right there on the left. And you're going to hear directly from a resident of Alturas in a few minutes, but first I want to share a little bit about this complex with you. It was built as temporary military housing during World War II, never really meant to last decades and decades, but thrown together very quickly for that purpose, and it hasn't had any real significant updates since then. About 6 years ago, it was sold, and those owners kicked out an organization called New Futures, which have been offering support and really wraparound support for students and families from the Highline School District who lived in Alturas, which is really high. If you've ever driven down Ambom on the time when school's letting in or letting out, kids are just flooding the sidewalks waiting for their buses. So this program was using some of the units. They were offering counseling, they were offering ELL classes, they were offering mentoring and support, community support, and when the unit sold, or when the complex sold 6 years ago, the new owners didn't want that and they left. A couple years ago, and actually what residents have told us, since New Futures has not been present investing in that community there at Alturas, violence has really gone up. And there was a shooting there actually just this week. So it's really hard to think about the impact of removing that kind of program from that complex. Just a year or two ago, Alturas was sold again. And Alturas was purchased by a man named Greg Fowler. Now, Greg Fowler does not live in Burien. Greg Fowler lives in San Francisco. And Greg Fowler has a net worth of $3.8 billion. Greg Fowler owns approximately 27,000 units in total. Many of those are in Seattle. Immediately upon the property changing hands, as soon as Greg Fowler bought that property, the rent went up. There was no change to the condition of the property. The rent just went up. Then the property they put new siding, they painted a little bit, all superficial on the outside, and the rent went up again. Just yesterday, residents were given notice that their rent was going up again. There are families that are looking at each other saying, what are we going to do? Another example of housing-related issues and pressures from the outside comes from Burien. The Maverick, which is a luxury apartment building that borders the library, it's really at the heart of the downtown core of Burien. There's about 240 units or so there, and it opened just last year. The rent at the Maverick for a 2-bedroom apartment is right around $2,500 a month. The land for the building that had it now has 225 units on it, was bought recently. It was bought a couple years ago by a private real estate company called Legacy Partners. Legacy Partners, their offices are not in Burien, they are in San Francisco also. And their company is worth over $2 billion. They bought that land right in the heart of Burien, a very, very good real estate right there, for $2.7 million, which is really not a lot for a land that you can build that kind of unit on. The development there is profoundly reshaping the center of Burien. And most of the time, we hear that it's really good for small cities to bring in new development to the city because the city gets more tax income. So we were shocked when we found out that the city of Burien gave Legacy Partners an 8-year tax vacation. They don't have to pay their property taxes on that piece of property for 8 years. So the people who are paying $2,500 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment, they're in Burien. But the people who are making the money, bringing that kind of money in for 225 units, $2,500 a month, and being exempted from investing in our community with that property tax money, are not in Burien. Finally, a word about tierra, about land. This area, sadly, has made national news lately over the last several months because of the issue of sanctuary. An organization called Respect Washington, which is a statewide anti-immigration group, gathered about 3,600 signatures for an initiative that would repeal the sanctuary ordinance in Burien. In September, a judge decided that that initiative would not be on the ballot, that it did not meet the requirements, so he blocked that initiative. She blocked that initiative. But where did the energy and the money for that campaign that gathered 3,600 signatures, where did that come from? So we learned that the campaign in Burien was funded to the tune of $25,000 by an organization called US Inc. US Inc. is not in Burien. US Inc. is in Michigan. And the head of that organization is a man named John Taunton. John Taunton has written and advocated extensively for eugenics, for white purity, for English-only America. He has been called the racist architect of the modern anti-immigration movement in the U.S. And he gave $25,000 to Respect Washington to block the sanctuary ordinance. The pressures, also Respect Washington was also behind those flyers that I mentioned. So that's all the same organization in Michigan led by John Taunton. The pressures on the people we love here in the Highline area are real. The pain and the loss of dignity they experience when these three areas of their lives are jeopardized, it's real. And it's critical that we trace the sources of those pressures and recognize the architects of that suffering. We see it in our communities. And while the sources may be billionaires in San Francisco and eugenicists in Michigan, the pain is felt locally. But the good news is we believe the solutions are local too.